Rev up your engines!
Elias says, Scotty, what's your experience with the most recent generation of Lexus RX, 2016 to now? Lexus makes excellent vehicles. They're extremely overpriced when they're new. I mean, everything's, but those are really expensive vehicles. Here's the thing. If you're talking about buying a used one, always pay a guy like me who understands them to check it out. Most guys charge $100 or so. Always, because I had a guy buy one a few months ago in Nashville. He brought it here. Was an oil burner. I started taking the spark plugs out. They were all coated with oil. The previous owner never really changed the oil at all. You beat any vehicle. Don't change the oil. Don't maintain it. You can have problems. If they've been maintained, they're excellent vehicles. If you buy one, get one that's got service records, all the oil changes and all that stuff. They're well-made vehicles. There's no arguing that. No, they're overpriced. So we've got a ES 300 Lexus we bought used for $3,000 with 60,000 miles. Buy them used. I bought a $40,000 car for $3,000 with 65,000 miles. But I'll never buy the new one at 45. I'm too cheap. Anchor says, Scotty, what do you think of the Mustang going hybrid? Well, it was only a matter of time for all that stuff because they're making smaller engines. They want to get better gas mileage. And, of course, they're going to do that. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually they go full electric. I mean, that Mustang E that they have, it's not Mustang. It's an SUV. They just use the Mustang name. I'm assuming at some point in time, they'll probably make a regular Mustang that's unelectrified. Because, of course, electricity puts out a tremendous amount of torque, and they could do burnouts like no tomorrow. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did that eventually. Personally, I'm not a hybrid fan. It costs too much money to build the stuff as it ages and it breaks down. Plus, you can't really do many modifications. A lot of guys buy Mustangs, they want to modify them, fool around. You have a hybrid, you can't really modify that stuff. The technology, it's an insane level of complexity, so you really can't fool around. Most guys buy Mustangs, they want to fool around with them. King Kang says, Scotty, I was wondering, what would be less expensive to maintain, a used American diesel truck or a used German car with 150,000 miles? I do my own repairs. I'm an auto tech student. This may sound bizarre, but the German vehicle diesels are actually better when they're used old. The American diesels can go fine up to a point. I'll give you a perfect example. Guy brought me from Indiana one of these GMC diesels. He made the mistake of buying one with 170,000 miles on it. He'd put a whole bunch of money into it and it was still running like crap. The German ones, they can go a lot longer than that. The American diesels aren't made to last that long. Ages ago they were, because they had mechanical pumps, they were simple. Detroit Diesel made good ones, a lot of good ones. But now they're all computerized monstrosities, and when they break, they cost a fortune. Hardly anybody knows how to work on them. The German diesels are actually better over the long haul. That's just the way that it is. The American diesels, as they age, they become endless money pits. Just find a guy who actually knows how to work on American diesel trucks, and you'll see what it costs to fix them when they break down. And they will. Now, you buy a brand new one, you might get 150, 200,000, relatively trouble-free miles out of it, which is fine. But don't buy them with 150, 200, or you're going to have an endless money pit on your hand. Daniel Mark says, I got a VW Golf 18 with 30,000 miles. It is a 3-cylinder, 1-liter engine with 110 horsepower. What can I do to make the engine last? I'm in Europe. Change the oil every 5,000 miles. Don't listen to any of the crap people give you. Oh, you can change it every 10, 15,000 miles. No, change it every 5,000 miles, the oil and filter. Use full synthetic oil, and don't over-rev it. The Germans, they know how to make engines, but you start making them smaller and smaller. 3-cylinder, 1-liter. I've had motorcycles with bigger engines in them. You wang it up high speed, you keep shifting it at higher gears. You're in Europe, I'm assuming you probably got a standard transmission. Don't over-rev it. Don't do burnouts with it. Just drive it normally, and it might last. I've even seen people with those horrible 3-cylinder Geo Metros they sold here in the United States. Lasted a while because they drove slowly, conservatively, changed the oil a lot. Drone Production says, what's your opinion on an 03 Range Rover? Well, if you like endless money pits and throwing your money into them, go ahead and buy one. Especially in the United States. Those are yuppie mobiles. Repairs cost a fortune. The parts cost a fortune. Now, like if you're in England, they got them in junkyards all over the place. Guys know how to work on them. You can generally get them fixed a lot cheaper, but in the United States, the yuppie mobiles. And you're going to pay through the nose to get those things repaired. I had a friend in Houston that ran a Range Rover repair shop. There were so many rich people in Houston wanting to drive those things, and he saw what the dealers charged to work on them. Back then in Houston, they were charging close to $200 an hour to work on them. He made a lot of money working on them, but boy, I tell you, he didn't own one. He drove a Lexus. Bryce says, Scotty, any good vehicle recommendations for a beach in Puerto Rico? My mom thinks old Willie's Jeeps are great. What's your thoughts? Well, the old Willie's Jeeps could run forever if you can find one. It's going to be old as Hades. Now you want something on the beach? You might get some of those old dune buggies. They're even simpler. You got the Volkswagen Beetle air-cooled engine. You don't have to mess with the radiator and all that crap. Jeeps were fun too, but of course, they're even older. And when you get into, a Willie's Jeep, you're talking about what? Some of those things are 70, 80 years old. You buy something that old, something's going to break on them. It's a lot easier getting parts for the Volkswagens than an old Willie's Jeep, truthfully. Tony says, Scotty, my Nissan Altima 08, the rear door actuator is broken. I can't open the door in or out. What can I do? Well, climb in the other side. All right. Unfortunately, you're going to have to get the inner door panel apart. Without the door opening, it's a bigger job. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to cut it. Now, the inner door panel is just made out of cheap fabric and cardboard. You can get a little sawzall in there. You can saw holes to get to it, to get to the actuator to physically open it. But that's the only way you're going to be able to get in. I've done it on those things. You got to cut it to get inside to it because that's the only way you can get locked frozen. You're going to have to get the door panel off. Now, when the door opens, it's real easy. They pop out and boop, couple of screws. But when it's in there, they don't pop out because they're against the door hinge. So you're going to have to cut it. You can cut it with a, X-Acto knife or any kind of a cutting tool and get the bottom part off, get to the actuator, you'll be able to take it apart. But you'll have to cut it. It's the only way you can get inside. Jiva Alongo says, Scotty, why do Ford make their F-Series trucks better than their cars and SUVs? Ford makes well over 50% of their profit on the F-150 Ford lines. They don't want to screw it up. They know people are buying Ford pickup trucks. They want to pull a lot. They want to carry a lot. They want the stupid things to last a long time. So they built them at a much higher level than they do their cars and SUVs. People buy cars and SUVs. Oh, with the new models out. Oh, the new blah, blah, blah. A pickup truck is a pickup truck. You look at a 50-year-old pickup truck, basically it's the same shape as the new ones. It's a pickup truck, right? They changed the grills, blah, 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 but they still look the same. In the dark, you couldn't tell one from the other, right? And they just make them solid because that's their market. Same thing. And I'll tell you, I'm not a fan of Chevy Silverados. They used to be good, but they're crap now. But if you go up to the GMC 2500, 3500 trucks, they're really good. I mean, it's the same thing with Ford. And with Ford, you don't have to go all the way up to their, F-250, F-350, F-150s are still pretty well made. They're a lot better than the Silverados today. JT Archer says, I'm considering a 2016 Nissan Cummins 4x4 with over $100,000 for $30K. What do you know and think about it? Well, everything's overpriced now. So it's a Cummins diesel engine. They can be excellent vehicles. Now, 30 grand for something that's, 6 years old, to me, that's too much money, and it's got 100,000 miles, but that's just what things go for these days. A guy like me to check it out. We have fancy computers, and we can go through that whole system in less than half an hour on our computers and see if there's anything seriously wrong with it. You can't hide from the computer. Always do that. You're paying, what, $30K for a used vehicle with 100,000 miles. You're getting zero warranty. So have a mechanic like me check it out before you buy it. If he says it's okay, the price, you can't do much about that. But they can be very good vehicles because, Nissan doesn't make the engine. Nissan doesn't make the transmission. The rest is just body and brakes, and that's no biggie. Question is, how does a plug and a neutral safety switch come apart on a Ford Transit? It's on the transmission. Allows you to only start and park in neutral, so you can't start it in gear and start it and drive off, right? It's a stupid safety thing. Well, the reason they come apart is because they're made like crap. Now, from my experience with those Ford Transits, I've seen them break every 60, 70,000 miles. They're just plastic crap. It's down there on the bottom. The transmission gets hot. The plastic gets hot. It gets brittle and it breaks. They're just made like crap, and that's why they break. To give you a contrary example, I have Toyotas that are 35 years old, and their neutral safety switches still work, and the connectors have not come apart. It's just cheap production. That's all that is. Andrew Kutch says, Scotty, I got an 05 Hyundai Accent with a dead #1 cylinder. Could a blown head gasket be the culprit? Well, of course it could. If you blow the head gasket, you'll lose pressure. If the piston rings break, you'll lose pressure. If the valves on the top break, then you'll lose pressure. And on those, it often has a blown head gasket. What you could do is you could basically, if it runs, do the block lead test that I have in my video, how to tell if your head gasket's blown, Scotty, and if it's blown, it'll show up in that test, and you'll know it's blown. You got to take the engine apart. Mr. Chevy Man 1 says, beam me up, Scotty. Well, that's kind of funny, because years ago, when I did a car talk show on CBS television in Texas, I used to use a lot of movie clips and TV clips, right? They let you use up to like 7 seconds, and then it's an ad for the TV show, whatever. I went through every single Star Trek episode, and never does The captain say, "Beam me up, Scotty." Not in a single episode does he ever say that. He says, "Beam me up," but he never said, "Beam me up, Scotty." It's a myth. So, look through it. If you can find one, hey, I'm glad to tell me the episode and I'll see if it's true. But I went through them all, and he never said, "Beam me up, Scotty." A lot of these things are myths. People make up a story, and then people start to believe it. I believed it until I researched and found out that Captain Kirk never said, "Beam me up, Scotty," to Scotty. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.